Well, thank you very much, Acting Deputy President. And the purpose of this motion is to establish an inquiry through the Senate Economics Committee into the governance and the performance of the Housing Australia Agency. And the reason that this reference is necessary, and I would urge the Senate to support this important motion, is because the Labor Party's housing plan is in tatters. It is in tatters, and each and every day we come into this parliament and we hear the bragging from the Labor Party about how much money they're splurging on housing. You look concerned, Acting Deputy President. All okay?
I'm listening.
Okay,
to relate to your contribution, Senator Bragg. Please proceed.
Do you want to do anything unparliamentary? And the point is that the performance of the agency that is charged with expending the government's funds on behalf of the taxpayers, I think, requires serious investigation. And so the ministers of the Albanese government regularly brag about how much money they're spending on housing, billions and billions of dollars. Now, according to the MyEFO documents, it is now up to $80 billion that this government is going to spend on housing since they were elected. Now, $80 billion. $80 billion to build fewer houses than the prior government. So there is a fly in the ointment when the government is spending more money and receiving less in return. So we are wanting to investigate the governance and the performance of this agency, which is spending billions of taxpayer funds. The other primary concern is that the Labor Party has charged Housing Australia to undertake functions that it has no chance of actually doing in an efficient and effective way. And the government wants to be a property developer. The government wants to be an insurer. Now, in the long-run history of Australia, invariably the government has not been good at undertaking deep private sector activity like property development and insurance. And in fact, perhaps the Treasurer should go back and reread Paul Keating's memoir, and he might find that in fact Canberra isn't so good at service delivery like this. So the primary reason for this inquiry is to look at the functioning of this agency, which is spending a lot of money and I would argue has been asked to do things that it couldn't possibly do well. It couldn't possibly be as good as a builder. It couldn't possibly be as good as a private insurer at building properties or providing insurance services into the economy. And so there are many governance issues. There is the fact that the chair of Housing Australia attended the meetings of the Audit and Risk Subcommittee whilst not being a member of that board subcommittee. There is the fact that there was a secret investigation into the board undertaken by Intersection, which was covered up for 18 months by the government, but that $24,000 inquiry was commissioned by former Minister Julie Collins to look at the significant issues inside the board of Housing Australia. There is the fact that the agency is seeing a 25% staff turnover ratio. So every year at Housing Australia, 25% of the people take off. Now, in the past year, 6 of the top 8 executives have left. So this is an organisation that is under huge pressure because it's been asked to do all these things. The Minister, Claire O'Neill, has said, or I should refer properly to the Sydney Morning Herald article on 27 November last year, where it says that O'Neill reads Riot Act agency as Labor seeks to keep housing probes secret. And the point is that the Minister has had to go down to Housing Australia, bang open the doors and say, look, I'm going to read you the Riot Act because things aren't so flash here. And the reason things aren't so flash is because you've got people attending board committee meetings they shouldn't be attending, you've got board dysfunction, you've got massive staff turnover, and you've got executives in exodus from the organisation. So there are governance issues here inside the organisation. Then there is the fact that the agency is spending $30 million on consultants, massive amount of money on consultants. Again, from a government that said that they were worried that the taxpayer was spending too much money on consultants. And then there's another huge staff cost here of tens of millions of dollars over the life of this agency, which brings me to the primary concern about performance, which is that the agency has invested in it billions of dollars but doesn't seem to be able to build many houses. And the fact that we have tried to get to the bottom of how many houses have actually been built, but we can't seem to get a straight answer, and it seems to be 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 or 100 or 200, whatever. We don't seem to know how many have been built. But what we do know is that this agency has been egged on by its political masters to buy houses. It's been buying houses. We've traversed this at Senate estimates and other places, and it's been revealed that the organisation has been buying houses. I take the interjection. It buys houses.
Order,
and
Minister.
in fact, the interjection is illuminating for the chamber because the minister in the chair was actually the person
Order,
that was
Minister.
able to
Senators,
enlighten the
Sorry, Senators,
committee.
can I just take a moment? I mean, I don't have to remind everyone, but interjections are disorderly, and I'll just
Well, I'm
ask
happy
that
with
they
the
be
inter-
refrained.
happy.
Thank you. Continue, Senator Bragg.
I'm happy to take them. So the minister in the chair tonight is the same minister that actually told the Senate Estimates Committee that they were in fact buying off the plan. So they are buying properties that could be owned by Australians, but instead the government of Australia is buying properties. So they are buying, not building. So they're using taxpayer funds to actually compete with Australians in the market, which is another reason why this agency is in a lot of trouble. And then you come to the spend quality. So the average cost of a new build is about $500,000. But in some cases, this government is spending $1.3 million to build a new property. Now, the problem with that is that they are having to fund investors. They have to underwrite the investors' involvement because, of course, they are a government for vested interests. They always want to protect the investors, and they want to quite openly partner with their good friends at the superannuation lobby who want to invest in housing. And so the taxpayer has to fund this. The taxpayer has to fund the availability payments which go to investors in these projects. But this is another issue that we cannot get to the bottom of. We cannot see a line-by-line breakdown of the availability payments because apparently that is commercial in confidence. The taxpayer is not allowed to know how much that they are, the taxpayer can't find out how much they are underwriting the costs of the Commonwealth of Australia working with CBAS or Australian Super in order to purchase houses for the long term. So spend quality is a problem. And then we have the home guarantee scheme, the insurance company the Commonwealth is now running, which is doing it on the basis of no means testing. So any Australian, modest means, significant means, can now use the 5% deposit product issued by Housing Australia. Now the problem with that is that given the supply has been crashed by this government, they have pump prime demand, and what you see in the first month of the operation of Labor's scheme is a 1.2% increase in house prices at the entry level. And what you're seeing is a big disparity in the price differential between properties inside the home guarantee scheme and properties outside. And so house prices are too high for first home buyers in Australia. And one of the reasons they're too high is because after having crunched and collapsed supply, they've now pump prime demand at the entry level. And so they say they want to help first home buyers. They say they're very virtuous people. They want to help first home owners or prospective first home owners. And there's no doubt the Labor Party is very good at politics. They're very good at politics and spin. They're very bad at management, but they're very good at slogans and stickers. And so this 5% deposit scheme might sound good, but it is very bad for younger Australians, because what you're seeing is that first home price getting higher and higher and that first home getting further and further away. And so this is another problem. Home guarantee scheme administered by Housing Australia, which also seems to have significant governance issues. And so these are all the reasons, all these programs, are all the reasons why we must have more than just an audit by the Australian National Audit Office. We must look at the structure and operation of this agency, which is expending billions of dollars directly, but also now responsible for a very significant contingent liability through the uncapping of this 5% deposit scheme, where any Australian of any means can now call on the Commonwealth to insure their mortgage. Even the richest Australians can now access welfare through this Labor Party, and then you wonder why you've got a spending and a budget problem in which the Reserve Bank is really pleading with the Treasurer to cut spending. Now, spending at 27% of GDP, the highest in living memory outside of the pandemic, is forcing higher interest rates and more household pain for Australians. And one of the reasons for that is simply the government's reckless with spending. They're reckless with spending actual money in terms of the outlays, but they're reckless with how they use things like guarantees. I mean, the guarantee scheme here is not free. This is not free money. This is a liability that must be met by all Australians. And so when we've asked questions about Housing Australia estimates, and we've had Minister Ayres and other ministers in the chair, there's been a lot of obfuscation from the government and from the agency. It's been hard to get to the bottom of things. And when we've received documents, like we've received this intersection report, even the title of the document is redacted, even the title. And there are pages and pages of redactions here, which I know I'm not allowed to use as a prop, Acting Deputy President. But the point is that even the title of the document is redacted. So when the Centre for Public Integrity says this is the most secretive government since the Keating government, this is one of the reasons, because the documents that have been funded by taxpayers into the performance of this agency are not provided to the Senate. They're not provided to the Senate in the way that the Labor Party campaigned that they would be a government that would have integrity, that would be transparent. And so we haven't been able to get to the bottom of things. We can't see the availability payments. We can't see the subsidies Labor is paying to their mates at the super funds. We can't see the governance report because it's all redacted. We can't get to the bottom of the staff turnover. We can't get to the bottom of the dysfunction, the hellhole that is Labor's Housing Australia. And so we're very pleased that the Audit Office is independent of the government and can't be told and can't be bullied by this government, and that they will do their performance audit into the quality of the spend, which is now reaching $80 billion. $80 billion to get fewer houses. But that's why we need this Senate inquiry, because the Audit Office will do an inquiry which is going to be mainly financial in nature. It will look at some of the quality of the spend, no doubt, and it will make recommendations to this parliament and to the government. But the Senate inquiry can look at the governance and the structure of the agency. And it seems that the board, which appears to be a very politically motivated set of appointments, and I have to say the competence of the board, I think, really is in question. Even in the last Senate estimates hearing, when I was able to ask the new chair when they were appointed, they didn't even know. They had to look at a piece of paper to find out that they had been appointed in the last week before the estimates hearing. So maybe this particular person was appointed because they didn't have any knowledge of the issues at Housing Australia that predated his very recent appointment. And so these are all the reasons why the Senate should vote for this motion. We should have an inquiry which allows us to make serious recommendations about the structure and operation of this agency. The Audit Office will do the financial piece, but we should do the governance piece. If the government's going to spend this money, we should try and encourage them to do it as best as they can for the Australian people. These aren't our policies. But our job is to hold the government to account and to get value for taxpayers and to make sure that there is no maladministration. That is our job, and so we can do our job better, we would be hopeful that the crossbench will support this motion.